what's up, people? It's the Solarkidd. I'm back on the other side of the sun podcast, and I am honored to have a legend in the building today.
Heavy title.
Heavy title. It is Emile YX, or just Emile, founder of Black Noise, right? Hip hop activist, social activist from the old school, original
old school.
original old school, bro.
Yeah.
Hip hop pioneers in South Africa, bro. I mean, you guys are doing it since like what, late 80s or?
Actually, yeah, Black Noise from 88, but we were b-boying in like from 1982 already.
That's what I'm saying, man. People don't know, bro. Yes.
Yeah, it's a long time ago. In November, I was putting up pics just to share some of the pictures of back in the day on my Emile YX Facebook page, and I was like a lot of the kids, when I put out the pic, they were like, "Oh damn, their father wasn't even born." I was like, oh.
So I was speaking to Brian from Mood Phase 5, the drummer.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I had a chat with him like a few weeks back, and he was also telling me about the scene in Cape Town at the time, like in the 80s. And I was thinking, damn, where was I? Like Joburg was dead, man. I mean, I was still quite young. I was only about 9-10 years old, but still, like, yo, man, I felt like we were missing out, man. You guys.
Yeah, I mean, what's the name? Like I think the b-boy scene is or the hip hop scene in South Africa is lucky that I think for the political movement in Cape Town, because it made the scene like thrive irrespective of any like economic possibility, you know.
I was gonna ask about that, yeah, because I mean, like, they want like real infrastructure in terms of like going to clubs. There was no Apollo or anything like.
Not far from. I think there was like the community, I think, was similar to like the Bronx, you know, that if you think about the Black Panther movement and like you think of Zulu Nation, then there's a parallel because there was a disconnect from the place that we were supposed to be part of, you know, and it still is to a great extent, because I feel like African Americans have been disconnected from America, even though they built the infrastructure of this country economically. You know, the country doesn't want them still. You know, and I feel like the so-called colored community in South Africa, there's a similar, like, we're African, but like people don't, you know, see, a lot of people don't see themselves as African, but also the country don't see them see like so-called colored people as African. It's like, nah, these people are mixed or whatever. So that, and the irony is our parents listened to that music. They were listening to disco and listening to funk.
Yeah.
So like all the music that, you know, that are sampled, our parents were listening to. So it wasn't new.
Temptations, Manhattan, all that stuff.
All of that, all of the funk, the James Brown stuff, like, you know. So it's a lot of people ask, like, how come Cape Town? Like, why not, like, you know, the hub? You know, why not like I mean, there were people that from Joburg, they were involved in the scene, but like I feel it took easily in Cape Town because of that history of like not being part of it, of the country, and also like the tribal connection. You know, like people like hip hop, people can't see a connection between hip hop and traditional Africa, you know. And I think that the public in Cape Town don't even see it, but they can feel it.
They feel it,
you know. Yeah,
I've always felt that connection with hip hop in Africa, and even like b-boying, like the like capoeira is like so reminiscent of you know.
I actually brought that here to, I keep saying here, but I actually brought that to Cape Town in like the late 90s with a friend of mine from Sweden, of all places. Like we brought Abada Capoeira to Cape Town.
I'm a part of Abada Capoeira, bro.
Damn.
Yeah,
okay.
I started in London, but this was like in 2008-9.
Oh, nice.
And
I was like fully pushing it initially, but you know, capoeira is like everyone's life becomes capoeira.
Yeah.
And so there's a guy from Observatory. I remember still getting the venue for him, Baleza. He's from Angola. And so
Okay.
he took it, he like continued. I mean, he still teaches, but he separated from Abada. He has like, I think it's called Nova Capoeira. And
They
they,
teach the original capoeira Angola, you know, the Bengal
yeah,
style and all
yeah,
that. Oh, I love that, man. That's sick, bro.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, the guy that came, like, it was after a tour that we did in Sweden. Like, even he came to one of the members of Black Noise actually went to go and break in their capoeira circle. Someone brought them there, like, after a gig or whatever. And then when he came to Cape Town, he like connected with me and explained, like, he met some of the guys and wanted to, and explain what capoeira, the connections between like the slave trade and Angola. And I was like, damn, immediately like made sense, right? But also like the bow pointed to the fact that like a Bushman heritage,
Yeah, I didn't actually know that the Xhosa and the Khoi and San people also have that same
play that, yeah,
birimbau, like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But it's actually South African.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like Southern
Southern, yeah,
African,
Southern
yeah.
African, yeah.
And the what's the name? So I'm still raising funds to publish this book called Reconnect the String. There's like a doctor wrote this. I only actually, after I wrote the book, I found this other book called Bushman Shaman.
Okay.
Bradford Keeney is the guy that wrote the book. But it's heavy how many parallels there are between like all of the elements of hip hop culture and San traditional culture,
Mm.
and like you don't. I mean, the first thing I saw really that was immediate, like you can't ignore the fact that like in aerosol art you write on the wall and like Bushman wrote on rock, right? So
Yeah.
like I mean that was easy to see a long time ago. But the thing about the MC or the griot tradition of telling stories, the b-boy or like the Cool Herc said it looked like the Owens broke, like they broke from this reality, like they went into trance essentially,
Yeah, yeah.
and so a lot of people say it's because of the break of the music, which is also like if you look at the b-boy and the trance dancer, it's like people are standing in a circle, they're clapping, there's a cyclic sound that's a loop. If you think about that beat that was taken from the funky drummer that's used everywhere,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
basically that same thing that's looped constantly. And if you think about the sound of people standing around and making that looping sound to go like chant, like it all falls into place, basically all of the elements. So this reconnect the string is like a Bushman statement that we are disconnected, like humanity is disconnected from our history, our heritage, and only way for humanity to like be able to live in harmony with the planet is to reconnect with that ancestral like idea of who we are.
I
And so
suppose
hip hop is like this perfect tool for getting that reconnection. But it's also this perfect tool to like abuse as far as the industry is concerned.
I mean, the way it's gone, it didn't start out like that. It started out,
Yeah.
with a good intention, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean that's why I was saying about Cape Town is like you're drawn to the circle, but you don't know why. Like you initially just like this is so familiar, me bro. And means is like, nah, this is yellow culture, and like I'm like, what? It feels right,
Intrinsic,
and
yeah. It's a part of
so
everyone, like,
yeah, and that's why I mean for me also that's why it's a global culture, because like if you think about like Africa or like this people, when the anthropologists did like a DNA research, they found that the Bushmen have the oldest DNA on the planet, and everyone's DNA can be connected to that, no matter who you are and where you are on the planet, right? So like the idea of like the African diaspora spreading from like the
Southern
southern
Africa.
point of Africa to all of the world, and the people don't like that. People don't like say that you're African. That they even in Africa, like even in Cape Town, like at the moment there's a huge like Bushman revival,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, my
means
cousin is involved in a few things out there, with a Bushman pit and a few other people there. There's a Bushman Q7. They're like just reviving, like you say, reviving the culture and spreading the awareness, which is really good.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a lot of people are are like doing it because of the connection to land, you know.
Mm.
Which is kind of ironic because like the Bushmen didn't believe
Oh,
in ownership. They believe in that they were owned by the land. So it's a different thinking, you know.
yeah,
I've
I
been,
agree.
yeah,
I mean, I suppose it's weird to think about. Like when you think about, I mean, reparations is one thing, you know what I mean? Because obviously, like in the UK, Caribbean people and West Indian people all, you know, speak about reparation, which is fair enough, and in America as well, and then in the same in South Africa. But it's like, how do you redistribute the land now among, you know, a nation that's probably tripled, quadrupled, probably like, I don't know, in number, like
yeah,
since the time that the land was originally taken away, who gets and who doesn't get, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, and then you have our tribe. I like actually a friend of mine I was speaking to the other day was saying that so-called colored people, we are an African tribe, and it's about time that people start actually like realizing it and accepting
yeah,
it, because I think and when he said that, it just made, it's like, yeah, it made me accept myself, because I mean, you know, like with us, I mean, more than just our history being taken away, we were also like indoctrinated in so many
yeah,
other ways, hating our skin color, whether you're too light like me or you're too dark or you're too whatever, our
yep,
hair, you know, Kusara and what, like, you know, I used to get teased, all these
yeah,
things that we were, you know. So we should look at it like that, I think. I mean, because we're
yeah,
indigenous to Africa. We were made there, you know what I mean?
exactly,
We are of
yeah. I mean, I did the production Afrikaans. I don't know if you've ever
yeah,
heard of it. Yeah.
yeah,
So myself and Kyle Shepard and Jitsvinger is actually like the guy that came up with the name Afrikaans, and like placing the language Afrikaans in its history begins in Cape Town. You know, it's undeniable that it's like a Portuguese that was born out of the Creole
Creole,
connection
yeah,
in
Creole,
Africa.
yeah.
You know, so like in with is like without a doubt, all of this Bushman, like the fact that when we speak and people agree, they say
Mm.
and is actually a Khoikhoi Govap word for yes, like the is yes and is no. And like all our lives, we say this, but we have no, and our parents are like, nah, you don't earn means earn nie vir groot mense nie, which is kind of ironic because they actually just repeating what like the Boers were telling them. In order for them to disconnect our ancestry from us, they needed to stop us from speaking
All the time.
these click languages, right? And so the irony of Afrikaans is that there's Gogga and Kriki and Kwaga and Dagga and Aitsa and Ai. These are all
And yeah,
Bushman
now
words, you know.
why, you
And
know,
so it's like people when I do these talks at schools, these are like when I say those words, they're like yo, and then they'll be like and I'm like, yeah, I see there julle is Bushman by julle witty, you know. So it's so it's there's this reconnection, but the other thing is that the tribes like Xhosa, I mean, even that word has a click in it. So they actually got their name from the Bushman. The Bushman actually named that community,
right. Mm.
and a lot of them like intermarried with the Bushman tradition. So even Zulu healers will tell you that the most powerful healers, or where they get their history of healing from, is from First Nation Bushman people,
Mm.
you know. And so like my thing about the uh, taking on the tribal identity in itself is a fabrication, right? Because if you think of Shaka Zulu, he actually conquered a whole lot of people and
And then
basically
created the
forced them
Bushman.
together to be called Zulu. So they're not like this idea like the people of the heavens. It's just a fabrication that was put together, right? And so the same with like when you ask people from like, and I've been able to speak to like some First Nation people in Southern Africa, like the Bushman community, and they will say like they will rather that you call them Bushman than San or Khoi, because those two are like are European like anthropological names, you know. It
Yeah,
isn't them. They didn't choose that
German.
name, you
Mm.
know. So it's like
Even just
for
saying
me,
Khoisan, because a lot of people say Khoisan, but they
yeah,
don't
which is
realize it's two different tribes, actually. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
and even that's never what they like call themselves, you know. There's Khoi and the Kang, but it's all languages, but they didn't see themselves as that collective, you know. So it's again like people came from outside and named them.
Yeah.
For them, it's like those names weren't who they were, you know.
But
So like
now,
the older people will say, nah, see, I remember Boesman, moet jy raai sê nie, you know. So I was like, yo, that's heavy. Because on the one hand, you have all this like anthropologists who were like, nah, that's derogatory, don't say Boesman. And then they like, nee, ek bly, ons kom van die bos af, ons is Boesman, sê net eie Boesman, want die ander, ons, wie's San, wie's Kwaai, waar kon hy vir dan, you know?
But
So it's
people don't like Bushman either, or even colored,
Yeah.
or it's like, I don't identify as colored, I'm not,
you know,
or I don't even identify as black, or what do you
know,
identify?
yeah. Which is, I mean, it's a like our community have no choice. Like all of my like songs dealt with identity and the search for identity, you know.
Oh no, how do you feel about, I mean, the fact that like with us, so I've also like been reading and researching my whole like life, not life, but since I've been like was old enough to understand, like because of being mixed race or so-called colored in South Africa, I never felt at ease because, you know, come to England, these people have like 1,000 years of their history in the books and shit, like, and you can see their castles and whatever. Like that. Whereas with us, there's nothing. So I did a DNA test, and like I mean, basically everything I assumed or that I learned about was revealed in this DNA test, and the DNA comes from pretty much like in thirds, say mostly of Africa, Europe, and Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because they came, the Europeans came, and they took the slaves from Malaysia, all those places, brought them to the Cape, and then we mixed with all the people, and then Dagga, Bushman, you know what I mean? So so we're not, like, I know probably in the Cape there's more people whose DNA percentage is probably more closely like linked to the actual, you know, First Nations people or Bushman people. Whereas, I suppose even more like when you go out Joburg, Durban, whatever, we like, maybe more mixed.
Northern Cape, you'll probably find more Mensa that's got like deeper Bushman heritage. And there's a lot of people, even in Cape Town, that are like the percentage is much higher than what people claim, like the illusion of like, so, you know, you find people who are like part of the Bushman movement, or like, if you look at them, like, this all look like he's white, never, I can't, he's running this move, right? And then, like, but that I was like, nah, he's what, 100% Bushman. And I'm like, wait a minute, you know, like you.
How do you feel about that? How do you feel about us calling ourselves Bushmen when in essence we are actually something, we are completely indigenous to South Africa. Our tribe as such was made there because of the mixing, you know what I mean? They're in District 6 and all those places, Book Up and all that.
Yeah, no, I'm for me, I find all of the like the boxing like I find it very dangerous because you're perpetuating further illusions. I mean, like race itself, I mean, I understand being here in the US as well, that race is how things are run. Right? that's the always the trigger. Race and religion is a masterful tool for capitalism to divide people, you know. And there are more mixed people on the planet than there are like this illusion of purity. Like no matter who you are, you got like a mixture from somewhere, you know. And if you go deeper, you'll find that you all come from this first people, right? So for anyone to call themselves Bushman, they have justification because historically everyone come from Africa, right? And so like for me, that is like what I try to aspire towards, right? To connect to that First Nation, but within the global context of like African for me is synonymous with human. And in order for all of us to return to our humanity, we have to reconnect to Africa, you know. And for me, like that makes more sense. There's one of the guys that was on Robben Island, the teacher from the Cape Flats, Dr. Neville Alexander. He had this thinking of returning to the source. Now, I met with him before he passed away. And like this, before he left, before he passed on, he was on his way to Germany for some like, you know, and I went to meet him and I was like, yo, I mean, I really am struggling with this idea of telling Mensa that they're African because they are being told, like we're being told we're colored all the time, remember? Like, how can you, like, you know, I find it difficult for me to teach a Lightie from that point of departure, man. And so he was like, look, I understand maybe the journey is to first find like colored people that are role models for Lighties to identify with, but then to take them, not to stop them. And that shouldn't be your point of like, yo, this is it. to go back and say, check it, all of us have this heritage that's from all over, but everyone all over has this heritage to, or this connection to Africa. So the source is like the Garib, which is the Orange River, is the Bushman. And then there's all of the world that came from that, you know, and that you should be proud of all of your heritage, not just this like, okay, I'm only Bushman, but within the context of like a tribe, instead of like, this is the First Nation that all people, or Africans that all people. I mean, if you think about it, people who toss out Zulu, they also don't see the Bushman as African, which is messed up, because like, because this is the oldest nation on the planet, right? All people have come from this. How can you not see them as African? You know what I mean? And it's very divisive, because it's a selection not to see them, you know, which is kind of, I mean, I was at this First Nation gathering where, like I mentioned that, and all people come from Africa, and like people were like, no, like all those tribes were like, no, we come from, our ancestors were like, you know, we were the first, and the people from Australia specifically, the Aboriginal men, so they were like, nah, they were long before the Bushmen, and like, but they have the oldest DNA, like it's. Like, you know, it's scientifically proven that this heritage goes back to Africa, you know, and that people spread from Africa to different, like all over the world, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think the European like experiment of vilifying Africa makes it harder for people to be like, okay, I mean, you know what I mean? Even in Cape Town, like I told my Tannie, oh, Jesus is probably African. They were like, oh, Jesus is like, you know, or like Adam and Eve were Boesman. They were like, what? Boesman? Because I mean, if you think about the images you sold, you know, as a kid, like Adam and Eve like look Swedish, you know, or even Jesus on the cross looks Swedish.
Yeah,
like they don't look
blonde, bro. I mean, even people from Israel don't even look like that. People in Jerusalem don't even look like that.
Exactly.
You know? I mean, the darker people, Palestinians don't look like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You know, and I mean, it's all like well crafted, man. It's like a well played game, you know. And if you even Egyptians are like, nah, they weren't black. And you're like, me bro, if you look at the pyramids, if you look at the drawings, like, why is that pigmentation that's used black? Like, I mean, Kemet was the land of the black. That's what Kemet mean, right?
Yeah.
And they were like, just nah, they can't be.
Yeah,
There's all this like deep disdain for African civilization, you know.
Not only there, you see it all across there, Libya, Morocco. Yeah. Like they would rather identify themselves as Arab, or you know what I mean, because you get the Berber tribes and all that stuff along that. So it's deep. When I went to Morocco, I thought I was in Cape Town, bro. They look
for real, man.
Like Cape Town.
For real. I mean, I went to what's the name? I went to my wife is from India, right? And so like when I went to India, I was like, my bro, this look like Mitchell's Plain. Because you know, our idea of Indian is like Durban, right?
Yeah.
And that's South, that's like heavy South Indian, not really the whole of so when you go to like Mumbai, you're like, my bro, this look like an auntie from, you know, I'm like, this is and means this the range of Indian is like from like Eastern looking, like all the way to the darkest brother that look like he's from like he's like from Somalia, you know. I'm like, you know. And again, like just the box that you sold, nah, is obviously what is sold in media of like this one version. The same like people when they think of color, they like that brow with no front teeth that they somehow always find in the media.
People automatically assume I'm from Cape Town. I'm like, no, bro. There's colored people in Joburg. You know, like I'm not from Cape Town. Like my father's from Cape Town. That's it. Like
yeah, for real.
Yo, man.
I what's the name? Like I there's a lot of cases where people like, yo, you from Brazil, or like, you know, when you go somewhere, people like South Africa. Wait, what? Like, how are you from South Africa? I'm like, yeah, bro. I can't even get like, no matter where you go, you just can't find home, bro.
Yeah, well, I mean, even for me, it's like in summertime, maybe Brazilian, whatever. Or like in winter, I go really pale. So then maybe like some people have even said Mongolia, bro. Like, are you from Mongolia or like China or something? I'm like,
yeah.
Like, nah, I'm mixed. I'm just mixed.
Heavy.
But I was gonna not change the subject, but I wanted to ask, like, what was it like? I mean, coming up in South Africa, man, it must have been heavy, like those times, you know, in the late 80s, 90s.
Yeah, I mean, we all, like myself and Shep and like the early guys, like come out of like what was like the apartheid era of like anti-apartheid movements and stuff, right? And so we were at the in the school SRCs and dealing with that. But hip hop was a vent, man. It was like, yo, this is happening. Kiki, let's break. Like trying, like the thing about apartheid that people don't want to speak about is that mense still fell in love. They still went to movies. They were maybe, they Lighties were cock naughty. There's a lot of them who were involved in the struggle. Were like they had no idea. They knew it was wrong, what was happening, but they were like, my bro, we're gonna go throw stones. I see, check your stick out. We're gonna gooi the laws cars, and we're gonna catch on cock. You know what I mean? Oh, and but on the weekend, men still went to play soccer, still went to go to the movies, went to Joel, Monday kicking night, back to the struggle type of vibe, and I'm saying this, but there were people who couldn't do that, obviously, also because the struggle was permeated like in their community, So it's a mixture of like life had to continue because there was an ongoing struggle, and so Owens went to club and went to break. And so when we initially saw breaking, breaking sort of came out of like the whole attraction to American stuff, like stuff like roller skating, because all of us were roller skating. Michael Jackson, all of us were like copying Michael Jackson, So when Michael Jackson actually copied the streets, in his dance styles, and we didn't know that until only after, like, yo, he was doing the backslide, which comes from the streets. He was doing like certain popping moves or robotics that came from the streets. So it was like a continuation for us, man. Like, yo, check out this dance. Looks like what he was doing, but it's more duidelijk. I want to spinning on the ground and gaan aan. You don't have to have like pointed shoes and your socks and your Nevada. You can't afford that. You just stick it in your tracksuit in your Takkies. It's duidelijk. You know what I mean? So we were already in that thinking, man. When it started out, and like initially it was a handful of Owens, and we didn't know because of the cultural boycott what things were. So a lot of the older school Owens, like what we call things is what it looked like. Like in b-boying, there's this rotation on the ground that like we call Russians because it looked like that Russian dance.
Oh yeah.
So we call it Russians in South Africa because of like our lack of access to information from the US. There are moves where Owens like you put your hand between your legs and you go from shoulder to shoulder. It's continuous backspin or fly windmills. We call it balls because you hold your balls. You know what I mean? So it's like all these names. We just thought like whatever it looked like, we called it. Like we call the move the turtle. They call it the float. There's a lot of like that type of disconnect, which is Kwaai because it shows that we weren't like we were involved in a political struggle, so we didn't have access to people in the US to be able to tell us what was going on.
I mean, it was developing in the US at the same time. I mean, you're talking like early 80s, yeah, bro. So it like the movement was actually still only like being developed.
Getting a voice. Yeah. I mean, they've already like really b-boying was around like from like the late 70s, like 76, 77, the first wave of b-boys in the US. And I mean, we didn't know, like we had no idea. Like what we saw in the movies, like everywhere in the world, the connection in South Africa is a little bit different because I only found out afterwards that they were testing movies in South Africa to check to see what the global market would actually do. So we'd get music videos from Malcolm McLaren, who had b-boy in it. He had Rocksteady Crew in I think it was called the Buffalo Girl. So we were seeing that around about early in 82 already. So, like we saw that, we saw Chic had the song. The very first thing I saw was this movement of the arm it's a video by Chic called Hanging Out. This brother just doing hanging. That's all he's doing. I was like, my bro. I was like, when I saw that like a whole night, I was like, how did that bra move like one section at a time, I say. And which is this is actually what he did was actually give the foundation for the wave.
Yeah.
We put it together ourselves from that. You check from that one clip. So there are a lot of these like stickies that were coming to South Africa.
Yeah, because
got
no
the first
internet,
Owens
nothing, man.
Yeah, I remember it was
No internet.
I mean,
Give me one.
and it's like hardline phones, like a bra phone me, bro. This I mean, Khocha, who was a graffiti artist, but he was with Ready D from they were called City Kids back in the day. He like, yo, this bra got graffiti at his joint, bro, and he live in like Kiki, I'm in Grassy Park. This bra live in the back of Mitchell's Plain, bro. We hike, Kiki, a frag. We're like, now we're gonna go check this graffiti. At the same time that he told Owens from like Athlone and whatever. It take us like hours, bro, to hike and walk to get to this bra. We get to his joint, bro. There's a table, no? And there's a frag people around this table. The graffiti is just so small cut out blocking, bro. Everybody is looking at this sticky graffiti. Now I can imagine you can now click on the internet and access like millions of pics of graph, right? But because of our passion for the culture, Owens used to like walk ridiculous distances to find the information, Yeah, so it was a interesting time for like accessing like small things, man. Like someone will say, "Yeah, I just saw this video." Nobody else got the video, and I'm talking Betamax video, and you get to this brass joint, and there's like 20 men in his Tannie's room. His Tannie's out, and we're all watching this one clip, and there's no like slow motion, so he's play rewinding the one sticky that everybody's like, and like suddenly you hear the door open. Yo, Donna, what maak julle hier? Like those Tannie chase everybody out because nobody's supposed to be in the room, right? So it's like all of this like information that you there's no other way for you to access it, and because of the cultural boycott, it's even more difficult to access.
I wanted to ask, so how big would you say that like Black Noise and POC and whatever actually got? Because I mean, like for me, like it's legendary. It's you know what I mean. We all knew. But I mean, POC came to my school in Joburg when I was like 11, 12, and that changed my life. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so you guys were like leaders, man. Especially for us. Like grasping onto this culture, hip hop was so important. But like, how big did it actually make it? And did you guys actually ever get like honored in the? Because I see they've got now a Hall of Fame.
Yeah, museum. Yeah, D and myself. I know POC as a crew have been honored on the and Ready D obviously, and then myself for like all of the like community work that I've been doing within the Hilderwood and that type of thing that we set up, the Hilderwood project. So there's the recognition in Joburg. There's not a like. I mean, it's a new generation of Lighties, man, and Lighties, they connect to whoever's the biggest, economically, and so because of obviously the commercial success of say Squatter Camp and Pro Kid and Proverb and those early Owens that
I mean they were like my era, but I'd say you guys were even before me though.
Yeah, that's the first wave of Owens, myself, like Black Noise and Prophets of the City were like we were the first signed crews, right? And then Goddessa after that is the first female crew. So it influenced people on a more, I wouldn't say a commercial tip. POC was bigger, much bigger than anyone else because it was the first signed crew, and because they did that election campaign to schools everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
So it was the first major influence. They were, but like that's a difficult one, bro, because it's we're from a community that don't buy, like they don't buy, they copy, right? And then secondly, like people hear Shaheen and Ready D and they hear the Afrikaans to their English. I didn't know this until I came to America. I was like doing a talk in end of 94, so just after the first election, I stick out at the Zulu Nation anniversary in New York, and I'm explaining the culture and men are like asking questions about politics, and suddenly someone asked, "Now, how come you sound more like F.W. de Klerk than Nelson Mandela?" I was like, "What?"
An American
you
kid.
shit. I was like, yeah, I was like,
American.
fuck. But then
A black American.
yeah, I was like, yeah. But it makes sense because of the influence of Afrikaans on my the way I speak English,
Yeah.
right? I was like, fuck. I didn't think of that until that person said it, and then it put into context why it was difficult for Black Noise and for Prophets of the City to enter the national radio space, because people weren't identifying with the way we sound.
Yeah.
You know, I can understand how POC to a certain extent when the two owns from Joburg, Junior and Ishmael, became part of the crew. I can see then how the people nationally would be like, okay, now we can identify. But the racial divide, I think, made it more difficult, man. For like, for example, and also we were signed once and we were like chicken knife foot sack for that. We quit from the label. Whereas they put out the Vrag albums, you know, and like our vibe was back then, the thing was not to sound like anyone else. So when POC were doing Afrikaans, we were like, nah, we're gonna cap on in English and do more b-boy driven stuff, you know. And so like the worlds that we were influencing were completely separate or different from each other, you know, until I think when POC went to Europe, Shaheen actually spoke to him while he was in Europe. He was like, yeah, fucking Emile, everybody know what you doing here in the side. Wherever we go, man, so it's like, yeah, do you know Emile? I was like, because I was writing to all the Zulu Nation hip hop owners around the world. Like I made contact with everybody. There's a bra from Cape Town, King Jamal, from Zulu Nation, who he gave me the contact of what's his name, Africa Bambata in the US. And I remember him being with me one night in Mitchell's Plain. We actually called from this brass joint to New York to speak to Bam. So one night we also phoned Shaheen. I was like, my bro, what kind of the tour? He was upset. He was like, yeah, it was I used to call fuck deep plek. That's coat. And I was like, yo, yeah, because they were roughing it, man, as a crew, you know, because you know, irrespective of being signed to an international label, it's all like your tours is really how you're making money, man. You know, because you're not really like, the market wasn't as massive as it became. And I think they sort of stepped out just before it really blew up, you know, so they didn't see the like economic wave that would have come, you know, for them if they stuck to it, you know. Yeah, Shaheen was getting hurtful. He was just like, nah, I can't handle this sack. And then he's like he's living in Canada, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so and I mean, like the last time they performed together was at the Jazz Festival, POC.
Okay.
I mean, D still does his thing, and
yeah,
you know,
I see.
yeah, he's just.
How do you feel about so like this? I mean, I don't think it started. So in Joburg, like I'd say, so in my like era, like 96, 97, 98, those times, and Squatter and Pro Kid and all these guys were coming up. And then there was this contingent of rappers with this American accent. So like you'd go to Le Club or you'd go to any of these spots in Joburg where like the rapping, you know, like I used to chill in Newtown a lot, like with all the kids. Like I don't know if you remember Snaz D and all these.
Yeah, of course, I know Snaz.
And I used to hate
Snaz originally from like Seawinds, Lavendale area or something.
Yeah, like exactly. Yeah. That's the weirdest thing. But then you get this guy and then you walk up to him. I'm in Joburg and he's like, yo, what's poppin', son? What's happening, kid? And I'm like, huh? Nah, man. Now, obviously, I'm a bushy, so I've got a raw colored accent, you know. So like, people don't like it, you know. And I used to have friends who used to come and freestyle with our accent and stuff like freestyle in Afrikaans and English and whatever.
Yeah.
People, it never caught on. People, I mean, even colored people don't like we don't even like our own accent back then. But how do you feel about this? I mean, now they've got these massive superstars, aka Casper and FTC, and they're all talking and rapping American, bro.
You know, I won't blame them, right? Because that's what they hear, man. You know, and also if you think about it, like what I just explained about POC, like even though they were keeping the way that they normally speak on the Cape Flats, or even like D with Brasse van die Kaap to just rap in Africa or Kaaps, you know, more than Afrikaans, like they pretty much rapped in Kaaps. And so like for me, like in order for AKA to make it, he had to twang. because that's just how Joburg industry is. Like they request that, you know what I mean? Like I remember like in advertising agencies back then calling us like, yo, we know you Black Noise, can you come do a song? Then you come there and you rap, they're like, can you try and not sound like you're from Cape Town? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm from Cape Town. What are you asking me to do? And like, no. Try not to sound like that. We want to have more American sound to this thing. Then you have to like, oh shit, now you. And so like, if I think back, it's like all of these requests, even in your own community, like when you're performing, they like I remember Mensa when I was in the middle of because Black Noise performances was strictly in English, right? And in between, I'd connect with the crowd in Kaps. I'd be like, oh yes, hello, right? And brass of mine, like, nah, man, don't do that. Don't speak in Afrikaans, man. You know, so when it started out, it's like, what? Me, bro, you understand me? Why are you like telling me not to? Like, nah, man, it just don't sound like hip hop should be in that language. And even when POC did, what's that song? Kykie, my bro, I like them say lost, which is a Moorse hit on the Cape Flats. Like, radio had arguments, my bro. That same radio that Ready is now on. They used to like, nah, we don't sound like this. I remember listening to them, Dimitri Jagels have this long debate about like, nah, you know, you shouldn't speak. This is from the ghetto. It's ham. I was like, what? You know? Yeah, and it's like the whole sturvy colored versus the like academic, hello, how are you? Speak proper English type of cuck, right? And so I can understand why like the Owens in Joburg chose that direction, because it isn't. It took a while for like Pro Kid and those owns to shine in like the spaza way that that happened, because the Mensa weren't ready for a long time. You check, Mensa couldn't. They just like, wow, this culture shouldn't be connected in that raw way to Africa, you know. And so like I can understand why it was so difficult, and I can even now like you can hear like the beats that are like sampled the exact same shit from like from the US.
Yeah, but this is the thing nowadays, bro. It's like when I was younger, when you were younger, like there was no internet. So like we had a culture. There was a culture in London. There was one in the States. Maybe similar hip hop based or whatever, but there was still your thing. Now you go to China, you go to Korea, you go to Cape Town, you go to America, you're gonna see colorful dreadlocks and you're gonna hear auto-tune and you're gonna hear those same 808s and whatever stuff going on. You know what I mean? Like it's global culture nowadays. You know? I suppose that's why now T.I. and these Owens, I see they co-signing people like Nasty C and you know, so if they liking it, like what who am I to think about the accent in that way?
Yeah, I mean for me it's also initially we used to like have like you know, we used to be like check your be yourself, be authentic to who you are. But industry don't work like culture does, man. You know, like there's the hip hop culture and then there's the rap industry. They're not the same things. Like I don't expect T.I. to know hip hop culture. Like I'm not like expecting him to be like, yo, this is the elements, this is where it come from. It's about, and I don't expect that because that's not his background, you know. And so for me, I have a different, like people ask me, hey, you in hip hop, can you help me? I want to like be in the industry. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm not part of that. I'm not part of the industry. Then they get upset. They're like, yeah, but I see you put out videos. I'm like, that's just culture. Me doing my own shit from home, bro. That's the culture, you know. So it's so like, and I get that a lot, you know. Like I ask the Lighties, what are you talking about? Are you talking about culture? You're talking about industry, and like their parents will call like. Now that the man, like obviously internet domain, so like the parents will like phone your WhatsApp number and like, my son is like really good, can you help him out? And I'm like, lady, like I'm not involved in industry. Like if your son wants to get on radio, then like that's got nothing to do with me. I'm like, I don't take the responsibility of like telling that I'm like going to get your son on radio, TV. Say that's not what I do, you know. So it's so I don't expect. I mean, I've gone like I'm at the point now where I'm like, yo, Lighty's rapping. Okay, duidelijk, it don't matter what the accent is. If I can, you know, get him to think about his sense of self-worth, then Kiki, I've done like what my job is to like get him to think, Kiki, I'm worth something. I can't let this people yak me for like every cent just because I got talent, you know. So it's like that type of vibe where, and I speak I say my say, you know, like I've been 2 years ago. I was at they asked myself and King Jamo. Osmic, who runs Back to the City, actually he I didn't know this, but like he actually got the idea from coming to an event that I ran in Cape Town. Like Back to the City is sort of like that version of what we were doing, you know. And because it's Joburg, it was like just blew up because like the industry is in Joburg, right?
Mm.
And he like then he told me like, yo, and I was amazed. And he was like, like you don't realize the influence that you had on like a lot of Owens in Joburg who came to Cape Town because they wanted to see the culture. And that's why D is also being respected for like being around for such a long time,
Yeah.
And because we don't think of how
Yeah.
people
How you
are
get to, how you
influenced.
affect people and
Yeah, because and then he was telling me at this thing like if there wasn't Back to the City and him showing that like 25,000 people can rock up for a hip hop concert, what is his name? Casper wouldn't have thought about filling a stadium. Because when he was there, he was like, oh shit, this is possible. I can fill a stadium if this, but I can fill this place. And he was like, because he saw us do it in Cape Town, that's why, it influenced Casper to realize this like bigger possibilities, So it's and that's why to go back to your question, like I don't knock the Owens who are where they are right now because they are involved in industry and industry is a mean beast, my bro.
I think that's a good way. That's a good way for me to make peace with it, you know what I mean? Because it's something that I've always, I mean, even here in the UK, like when I first came here, there were still Owens that used to also rap with American accents.
Yeah.
But I actually became good friends with people who was like in the boom bap thing, but doing it with a London, with a London accent and like
that's fucking dope.
Grime was coming up and all these other London styles, you know what I mean? All that was also coming up. But I was gonna ask you, so who do you like? Is there anyone that you like in South Africa at the moment? I mean, I'm a big fan of Youngster, bro. He's quite.
Yeah, I mean, when he started out, he was heavy American.
I heard. I spoke
met him. Like we were like.
I spoke to. I don't know if you know Perspective. He's also.
Of course.
So I was speaking to him. He's a good friend of mine. You were saying, when Youngster came out, I was like, I didn't even know that because I got drawn to him because I heard him rapping with his natural accent. I was like,
I mean, D and myself, I remember we being at this session, SAE at a session, and he was there. And by that time, he was very like still sounding very American. And both D and myself had spoken to him and said, Chika, the only way that you're going to get international reach is if you drop this like, and not only international, but national, is if you don't sound like everyone else right now. Because there's already AKA, right? And so I think he realized that early. That he was like, yo, I'm just beat Kaapstad, and that's the vibe, man, bro.
And he's so good with his wordplay and like
exactly.
the way he uses the accent and the wordplay, it's like it transcends the humness of our accent.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
and also it's I mean his choice to not be Kaaps was critical because I think also a lot of the other MCs who are amazing MCs from Cape Town, they choose to sound more Cape Town than what Youngster does. And so I think the choice of him to balance where he was and like selective words and also the topics he addressed from Cape Town makes it more broad for people to really get behind it. And everyone else is just like, sorry?
I think he also lived in Joburg for a while.
Yeah. And so like, I mean, like he was roughing it heavy, and I think that's the other thing about like the underground in Cape Town, like Owens, like as hard as they aren't willing to just up and hoy to go, because you if you want to be part of the industry, you have to go where the industry is. And there's very few Owens who will like leave Cape Town, I mean, whether it be POC or Black Noise or Codessa, we all went to go do our stint in Joburg. Remember, we had to go like rough it there for a while to make people check if this is what we do, and youngsters willing to do that,
Were you a part of African Dope at all? I know Goddess, or was Goddess?
No, we were, I mean, that's the thing about Black Noise. We were signed once to a label, and then we just like did everything else ourselves. Like from that, like after we had the deal, our focus shifted to the culture. And that was pretty much because I attended that thing, the Zulu Nation anniversary. When I came back, I was like, yo, I don't really want to like be a rapper. And I come from a b-boy background. I want to push the whole culture. And so our focus shifted to like tour and like teach Lighties breaking and do events. And, just pretty much like I got a teaching background. Okay. So I come from that gedachte of like sharing information, and so that became Black Noise's mission. And there were owns in the crew that were musical, but for me, it was like, if you want that, then like get a deal. And like it wasn't my, because I mean, I enough context to like, if that's what I wanted, we could have, because we released a cassette here in the States back in the day as well. Like, yeah, like an independent thing before anyone else really did that internationally, And when we did it, we're like, it's not really our vibe. Like the music industry wasn't really what a man wanted to do, So, and my vibe was always, if you want that, then, because we didn't have management after we left the label. I played the role of manager, but I was like, I don't do that cuck of going to meetings with execs and talking that language for suck, And so like it was a tough one for Owens who were like wanting to be MCs.
I suppose if you wanted to make a living out of it, and that's the different mentality. I mean,
yeah, and also like we figured out the different way to make a living. Really, man. I mean, it's possible to make a living from being involved in the community. Like I'd get like, I remember the first time after we had the deal, I'd like, check here, let's do 20 schools, and each school the Lighties bring like 2 rand, 5 rand, and you do a gig for the school. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, you had to have a thinking that was different from like, yo, I'm gonna get paid, because that isn't how Cape Town work. Nobody gets paid in Cape Town, And so, like, it's more of a Joburg thing. And then we were up in Joburg, we tried that, and men are like, nah, we're not really interested in like the cultural part of it. They just want to, And so when we toured, like we were teaching, basically. We were like a mobile school almost. I mean, I left my teaching to basically teach using hip hop, and if I look back, it's like, that's why there's so many b-boys in the country.
Well, that's what I was
many
gonna
people
say, like,
interested in the culture,
Even though you didn't choose that life of like the industry, I mean, the work that you've done in the communities it's amazing, bro. Because like hip hop it's such an important. I mean, I wish I was taught in hip hop, bro. I think I would have been a straight A student. You know what I mean? They could have taught me, like, they could have rapped the ABCs to me, and I would have been like, yo, this is it, man. I've got it. Rap the maths, rap the equations to me. I mean, like, and I was watching an interview, those, what's it called, drinks champs, and Buster was Buster was saying of how when he was coming up, being smart and being knowledgeable was a cool thing in hip hop. That was the essence of hip hop. KRS is to like speak to us, to become clever, to read books, to understand our history and shit. And now it's like
the dumb downs era.
Like just whatever, just like, I don't know, just whatever, just say whatever you want to
But
say.
you see, that's the thing that people don't realize, man. That's why I'm saying, like, I'm involved in the culture, not in the industry, because like you and this is the thing, like I don't expect industry, or which is capitalism, to have the interests of the people at heart. It's about exploitation of the people, right? So they can't sit together. It's just not the nature of capitalism to want people to be enlightened.
Like, even just a record contract, a record deal. I mean, I'm studying like music business and stuff, and like I'm getting into that kind of thing. And it's like any record deal is a fucking, like, it's a ripoff. It's just, it's
now with the 360 is even more like fucking ripoff. Your whole life is owned by some fucking O's. Like,
you know what I mean? Any record deal or record contract, unless you are writing it for yourself or you own your own shit or whatever, like you've been
screwed.
Someone is benefiting of your talent and you are.
But I mean, it's the nature of like it's exploitation, right? It's and so it's packaged as like, yo, we're gonna give you a deal. Kiki, why don't you just call it fucking enslavement, right? Don't like use euphemisms over here, right? And so like for me, that's the thing about, like, we were learning all of this shit at that time when we were signed. Actually, before we signed, Blackman's were like, I remember asking Shaheen, he was like, nah, bro, don't leave your teaching job. So I had the luxury that they already did it. And I mean, he's younger than me, so I asked like people in the scene. They were like, nah, Emile, keep your job. And I left, actually, when I left my teaching job, I sort of took a leave of absence. I didn't actually leave, it was only once I was like involved in like the education part of hip hop that I was like, nah, I can't, because I was reading what's his name, Steve Biko, I Write What I Like, and which is illegal at the time. It was before the change of board.
That was one of my first very important reads, bro.
You know, and then also, what's the name? I was reading Malcolm X's autobiography, you know, by Alex Haley, and for me, I mean, I was sitting in the classroom teaching, and then like the book would be open because I was so intrigued. I was like, and then it's like, how do you? There's a line that Malcolm X had, which is, "Only a fool allows his enemy to teach his children." And I was sitting in the class, I was like, yo, nah, me bro, you can't do this, because that's what teachers do in South Africa and even around the world. Like it's your location, it's European
Yeah,
inspired information
what
taught
did we
to Africans, you know.
what did we
So I was
learn in
like,
history? All we learned was the
all their
great Riebeck,
cack, man, bro. All their cack we learn, bro.
the great Van
You know,
Riebeck came, the great Van Riebeck came and landed on the
yeah.
Cape there, and you
All
know,
that cack I was teaching me, bro. I was like, nah, if it's sack, I can't teach this cack. Even like trying to speak in Kaap's to the Lighties, like the other teachers were like, nah, you can't speak like that. And all of us, that's how we speak, right? Like the teacher would be speaking, and I was like, but you using Afrikaans words in your English, but you say speak English. Like, how do you? I was rolling because you know it's conservative South Africa still, right? Even though it's at that point where it was going to like 90, was it
and
93, just before the first,
before
I
they left.
guess when I left in 93, left teaching in 93. So it's, for me, it's like, here's this culture that's teaching us our sense of self-worth more than our education is teaching us our self-worth, you know. And I was like, nah, I can't keep doing this. And as soon as I stepped out, it's like, you know, that thing in the Matrix where they unplug you from the system.
It was like,
Like, whoa. Because you don't realize how plugged in you are. Like when you, because I mean, you at school from a young age, and then you go to you go to college, and then you teach, or you work, and then like now imagine, Kiki, suddenly you wake up one morning and you don't have to do shit. You're just like, okay.
free.
You know what I mean? And like, I remember waking up in cold sweats, maybe like, oh shit, I'm late. I'm like, for what? Because I'm so programmed that like actually makes you like,
I was
yo,
just
it's
gonna
fucking
say,
heavy.
like, I suppose it's even not harder. I mean, yeah, it is harder for us because when you black, like, I mean, I'm not referring in terms of like black consciousness. I mean, like actually like tribal based, Xhosa, Zulu, Tswana, Pia, whatever. Even though you go to school and whatever, you still have your cultural heritage and your history that you
Yeah.
learn at home. Whereas with us, our cultural heritage is European. It's like Sunday lunch, whether you or if,
Exactly.
like, because our community is mixed, like Christian, Muslim, you know, the Muslims might hold more onto the Malay side of things and say no, they're more Malay or whatever. But either way, like our heritage is not steeped in Africanness. Like, you know,
Yeah.
your parents, my grandparents, my parents, like my grandparents in Elsie's River, like if I had to tell them they black, they would have been like, what?
They're like, me for
Are
sake.
you mad? And they dark, like proper dark, you know what I mean? But they would never accept that, you know what I mean? They colored.
Completely understand that, bro. I remember when I was like first, because a lot of my like black consciousness information was people in the US actually. I mean, I'm still in touch with a lot of people that I used to pen pal me in some, bro. Can you imagine that? Like I had to like I moved here to Fremont, which is like next to Union City, and a brother that I used to be a pen pal of like lived down the road, my bro. And so when
Oh
I
wow.
got here, I was like, yo, Polski. He's like, oh shit, Emile, like from back, and like, and then I started finding, and I'm like, I don't even call it a water, but I hold on to like letters and shit, right? And so when I was back home after I was here, I had to go look to see if I could find the letters he wrote. And we found out that because of like my teaching background, I suggested to him that he start doing workshops to spread hip hop in the Bay Area. And he was like, fuck, Emile, you don't know how you influence the culture to grow over here because of what you said about workshops. Because before that, nobody was like, fuck workshops, I'm not teaching anybody. Like when I told him that, he was like, yo, I'm gonna go out and teach. So you know, DJ Qbert, he was getting Qbert from the Scratch Pickles to teach me in some because of us in Africa speaking, or me telling him to do workshops. I was like, fuck. And then I found that letter and I gave it to him. He was like, I forgot that you told us to do workshops.
Wow.
I was like,
How did you actually
damn.
end up there in California? Like, how
Yeah,
did
my wife is from the States.
okay.
And so she her mom is got us like Parkinson's, because we were living in South Africa, man. I had like no intention of coming to the US. Man. I was like, nah, I don't look. And then because of that, then my kids are here, so I ended up staying because of like just before I was just about to come back to South Africa when the virus struck. So I was like, "Ugh." And so I basically stayed because I wanted to make sure that because she's working, and so if the Lightie's at home, like she'll have a nightmare over time. So
Yeah, of course.
I'm daddy daycare over here for the last year, man, bro. So
Nice, nice. I know that life, bro. I mean, I'm self-employed, so like before lockdown, that's what I was doing as well.
yeah,
The kids, the lighties. I got
yeah,
a good
no.
friend who's also from Joburg in Oakland, and he's like
Okay.
his father was Ian Herman from
Oh
Tanana.
shit, yeah. I actually sent his dad a mail a while ago when I was here, just like, yo,
So
if he's
he's in
performing, I'd
Oakland.
like to check out.
I
Oh
must I
yeah.
must link you up with him, man. He's
Yeah,
also a
please do,
rapper as
man.
well.
Now I remember his topi is I think I'm not sure if his topi was with Hilton Shoulder them. Um
You know.
they were a band called the Genuines. I don't know if his topi was one of that crew. Because that ones were heavy inspirational, remember. They were like doing Guma rock, remember,
Yeah.
Guma punk. I was like, yeah, shit.
So I know a
Yeah,
few
no.
guys who are like one of my good friends over here as well. He used to be in Amapondo back in the day.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So I'm good friends with his son who's born here. His son is half South
Oh,
African,
damn.
half British, whatever. But he's
Okay.
lived here. He was exiled here since the like 80s or 90s and stuff.
Yeah, I
He
remember
was telling
performing
me,
on the same stage with him a couple of times during the, like before the, actually before and after the like apartheid regime was officially disbanded. Officially, I wouldn't say unofficially, are still there.
it's always there,
But
man.
yeah, yeah, I remember breaking on some of their music, like
Yeah.
even POC. POC did a song with Amampondo at a
Okay.
concert in what was it called, at the Joseph Stone in Athlone. I remember I was like, "Fuck, this is brilliant," because they were like that live instrumentation
Yeah,
doing
with
like a
the
collab.
record.
Yeah, dope, man, bro.
But
Dope.
you was telling me of the punk scene in Joburg in the 80s, in the early 80s and
Mm,
stuff like that. And I was like, I mean, obviously when you're like, you don't realize what came before. So when you grow
yeah,
up, you think like your
yeah, it's
era
all new.
is, yeah, your era is the older I get, I mean, even the further you go back in history, you can go back like 6,000 years and be like, yo, these
Yeah,
people were like, you know what I
on a
mean?
level for
Yeah.
real.
Like, who
I
do
mean,
I?
there's what's the name? This guy that I was talking about. This book I'm reading. I'm actually almost done with it. It's not actually. I was checking out to read a bit here while I'm waiting, but like this is the book.
Bushman Shaman.
Yeah, my bro, this Bradley Keeney.
Keeney.
Yeah, you must read it. It's like the stuff that I'm like putting out in this book, Reconnect the String. Like they call it ropes to God, and like the idea that we have of the Bushmen is that this was like the older civilization, but very primitive. That is the biggest crock of shit, my bro. They are actually so like in touch with this planet that we are fucking primitive as far as like
Yeah.
that thinking is concerned. So for me, it's like a complete, like when you say, like, if you think about 6,000 years ago, like the way people thought was actually more advanced, but like Europeans thinking of like ownership of land, taking the natural resources, fucking up the planet. If you look at it now,
Yeah.
it's unsustainable. Whereas these people have been around like for thousands of years before that, like living in harmony with the planet and like connecting like right now with like 5G. I'm thinking these men were connected. Actually, this ropes to God is almost like a connection of a different type, man. Like being able to go into trance and connect with the animals and connect with the trees and the plants and each other beyond like having to actually speak. It's connecting to a different part of your brain than what is like. It's like now you're using like 5G to connect in a manner that you actually can if you like you think about using the brain differently, so if it's like yeah, this idea of things being new is almost
It's so
a
interesting that
fabrication, bro.
that same concept runs between the Native Americans, the
Yep.
Aboriginals, the
Yep.
Bushmen,
Yep.
ancient Indian people.
Yeah,
All
man.
the first nations of the world
Yeah.
and stuff. It's like they lived in harmony for fucking thousands of years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, within a space of like 2,000 years or whatever, we just fucking fucked up the planet.
Nothing.
Like,
Fucking blink of an eye, my bro. Like
yeah,
suddenly people think they're clever. You know the what's the name? When I went with my wife to India, like the thing about South Africa is that it's difficult to find unless you search, man. Like I've been able to, because of the Bushman, to go to a cave and to see Bushman drawing, right? And like if you think about your Tannie's house, and like every few years you got to paint that house, and here they use the paint, my bro, that's ran for like thousands of fucking years. That paint is still on the wall, my bro. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? They use the original pigment. Now you think of their medicines, they use the original plant to heal someone.
Yeah, using all
scientists come,
the synthesized
you know what I mean? And like their intention is to heal. So they use the plant to heal you. Here, doctors like, okay, let me sell you this product because, Kiki, I know that I need to make money. So I'm going to sell you as much of this cuck as I can. I don't really want to heal you. I want to just get some money out of you constantly for the rest of your life.
We add a few little byproducts or, you know, things that might cause side effects, and also lessen it so that we can chop it up and make more of it and snake.
Exactly.
So that, you know, we can
I don't know if you can find it online. There's a thing where they asked this old Bushman Tannie to taste. I don't know if you know that the what's the name? I don't know what do they call it? Yeah, but I know the Bushmen call it they call it Noba, a Woodia, the Woodia plant. Okay. And like so, an American company came. They did the research, Harvard or whatever, and they found the Bushmen used this. To what do you call it, like suppress your appetite. So it's an appetite suppressant. So they were like, oh shit, we can get people in the West who want to lose weight to take this, and then they'll be like, nice. So they just hijacked it. They took the research and they hijacked this Woodia, right? So and the Bushmen found out afterwards that, like, obviously, like everything in South Africa during apartheid, they didn't tell anybody. They just hijacked the shit. And so now there's like, okay, the same with rooibos and like other Bushman traditions that were hijacked, right? Anyway, so they got this, I think it's on YouTube, I'm not sure, but check it out. So they got this old lady, she got like maybe 3 teeth left in the mouth, a Bushman Tannie, chewing this Woodia tablet, and she burst out laughing, my bro. She's like, this can't do nothing to no one. It's so little in this content. She can't even taste the Woodia, my bro. She's like, and then they chew now that like you can only use it a certain amount, man, for it to really be effective. The Bushman, like in the research, they didn't say that you can't, if you use a lot of it, then it's not effective anymore, right? So I was like, yeah, there's own some masters at like fabrication, right?
And that's I mean, that's the world that we live in, man. You know, like, I mean, there's so many things. I'm glad now that like people, especially in this day and age, like kids especially, I've noticed because of the internet and the access to information, people are starting to write more books about, especially about us and our history. There's a Broe I spoke to, his name is Daniel Mpilo Richards, and he's also from the Cape, but he grew up all over. Like his father is Dr. Ruben Richards.
Oh yeah, of course. And, my cousin actually helped him push the book. That he put out.
So that like those books and like the Kamisa project and like the fact that I didn't even realize or even know that Afrikaans was a language created by the mixed people in Cape. It wasn't the Afrikaners who claim their fatherland and, you know, they savor Afrika.
Even the name Afrikaner is like a stolen name, basically.
Yeah.
Like it was a person born, a mixed person born in Africa was called Afrikaner, you know. So it's there's, I mean, when I read that, when I found out about like with Afrikaans, I found out like all this information. I mean, I was teaching before that. I was like, how come teachers aren't fucking teaching this in schools, my bro? You know, like this is
should be standard practice. Like.
And I mean, it's critical to people's sense of self-worth. You know, people who are, especially people who like are like at risk, you know, especially on the Cape Flats with all the gang situation and people looking for identity, so they're going to join a gang, right?
Why do you think our brothers and cousins are all on tuk and fucking doing all this other shit and smoking rocks and, you know, I mean, khafif and what and pilla and I mean, I'm not saying I was a angel growing up, but like, you know, like you've been, I mean, you know, I'm sure you know someone I'm
Yeah, of course,
affected
of
by
course.
it. In the same in Joburg, you know, of the drugs in the community.
Yeah,
So many of my family members are like struggled with it, you know, and even me at one point in my life, you know what I mean? Because you don't
yeah, no,
know, there's no way out from that. It's like you
exactly.
have nothing to actually, that knowledge of self is not there to kind of ground you, so
Yeah,
that even if you do go off the rails, you can call on something.
can
Whereas with
find,
others,
yeah,
it's like fucking, you don't know who the hell you are. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like you have no
I
idea,
mean,
no records.
with Hilda Wood, like our focus used to be teaching art, right? And like the elements of hip hop and that type. That used to be our focus. Like we shifted it completely to like, how do you teach Owens a sense of self-worth, man? How do you give them like the content of Afrikaans or the you know, the knowledge of our ancestry? You know, like when our facilitators back home, like we in 15 schools, when they go to the class, like those Lighties has actually been with me for the last 15 years, that ones that are teaching. So they're taking not only the shared curriculum that we created, they're taking all of this information about like the Bushmen being the first people to speak the most languages in Africa, in the world or in Africa, more than 2,000 languages on the continent, proving that Africa is where language comes from, right? So when they tell a Lightie at the school, kyk, jy praat soos jy praat, is duidelik, my bro. The teacher initially like, nah, they can't speak caps. Then the teacher realized the same Lightie she was stopping from speaking in caps is now confident in the class, speaking, because that's the language they speak, and that's their mother tongue. It's not Afrikaans. She can't expect it. Like, this kid is in the class fucking being forced to speak a foreign language. He's not going to speak. He's going to keep quiet the whole time. So all of these Lighties that drop out and join the gangs are like, fuck, why must I go to school? I can't even speak at school. They insist I speak this fucking Boer Afrikaans. I don't speak this at home. So I think the whole idea of like, what do they say, like the 76 uprising against Afrikaans, they don't realize that in Cape Town, that never 76 didn't impact Cape Town, because the assumption is that we speak Afrikaans. We don't speak that kak. It's like fucking trying to get me to read the report. I can't read the burger. I can't read that kak. It's not how we speak. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, what the fuck is that, right? You know, so it's and it's a, once you teach that content that was in that book, no? and that content actually was laying at UCT the whole time. Like someone went there, did the research for us and brought us like boxes and boxes of information that was at UCT. So what that says is they have the key to helping the Cape Flats or Cape Town or the people who are of mixed origin in Southern Africa as a whole, but they withhold it because they need to have a buffer of people who think that they are better than, you know, they created this illusion of like this box of people called colored. You know, the people didn't see themselves like as that shit before, but they had to enforce that so they could create this buffer community who like supposedly treated better, and like in my opinion, actually are not treated any better. They're actually worse off because they feel like I'm not black, I'm not African. So it's
that was terrible for us. I mean, even the fact that like, I mean, some colored people even had like maids, and you know what I mean. I grew up with and stuff. It's weird because you are marginalized minority in this country, and yet you have another like lower tier here working for you. So you obviously thinking now, you know, we good, like life is good here. We got a maid and whatever and stuff, but you're not even close to the middle class or whatever, the beginning poor Buddha class, you know.
That is clever strategy, my bro. It's really like, if I look at a lot of them, I think like, these owns are masterful, my bro. You know, because they needed that. They needed to make people feel like a bit better. Like, and it was like, it's more like that thing that Malcolm X speech about the house nigger and the field nigger. You know, it's the same strategy, the same technique of othering people. You know.
Yeah.
And I mean, to this day, like Cape Town, when I look at what's happening in Cape Town, in Brackenfell, this is the same technique that's being used to separate people who are the majority. That collectively, people of color are the majority, but they don't see themselves as, they see themselves as a minority. So it's I mean, the game is played dirty in Cape Town at the moment, because you have tribal infighting. You know, we got the so-called colored community and the class are fighting for land and space, right? And essentially the DA is using that to try and create a bigger, because they aren't going to win the Western Cape because they fucked up with the colored community. So they need black votes. So they're playing a different game and bringing and insisting to get a bigger quota of like so-called Xhosa people into the Western Cape in order to shift that vote, you know. And so it's and you have the ANC doing the same thing. So it's got nothing to do with the people. You know, I got Brasso who's in Google here to like, nah, Emile, this one's coming from the Eastern Cape or just fucking selling us out. And it's the same people, but they understand that they're using they're using people's need for work. You know, so people are coming to Cape Town because they are told that they can access work, irrespective of the people who are in Cape Town who are also Xhosa, who are like, who are saying, nah, we don't stick out here, man, because you're taking work for cheaper. And then you got people who are like from Angola and from elsewhere. Who
I was just gonna mention now. I mean, we haven't even touched on the xenophobic topic, because that's another thing I spoke to my friend about. Is like growing up, I never looked past our borders, bro. And like Africa is beautiful and it's amazing. Exactly. Like I never looked beyond our borders. Like how the hell it took me to come from Joburg to London to be here and to recognize that I'm African and start becoming a part of the African diaspora and being part of, you know, learning about West African music and all, you know, like learning to, like I learned to play djembe and stuff in London, you know what I mean? It's weird. But I'm from Africa, you know? And that's that's colonialism, power of colonialism. It's easier to fly outside of Africa from South Africa than it is to fly like somewhere inside the continent, you know? Weirdest thing, eh? Yeah, I mean, that's how the infrastructure was set up. Yeah, they said like, infrastructure is on a level of that. Yeah, they said something like, I swear, I don't know if it was to Nigeria or something, or like it was a while ago where you couldn't go directly from somewhere like maybe Saudi Arabia or even in Europe directly to Nigeria or somewhere in West. You'd have to go there, then go to South Africa and then come up. So they made it like completely hard. Yeah, I mean, and that's the as the more you like delve into like self-worth and stuff, the more you realize how divisive throughout Africa, like the colonial powers have been, you know. I mean, like, how do you only find out like later in your life about like the mass murders that were happening in by the Belgian king? What was his name? Leopold. I was like, how the fuck do I know about Adolf Hitler and the Jews, and I don't know about this shit. Don't get me started on that topic, because every year when it's Remembrance Day, like I must just keep look, I feel sorry for the Jewish nation, and for whatever happened and stuff. But like, what about the genocide in the Congo and the genocide in South America and the genocide in Papua New Guinea and Australia and South Africa with the Bushmen and you know? Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes, we can remember that Adolf Hitler. It was terrible, but like, yo, man, there's some. What about others? Yeah, I mean, the thing about the ongoing struggle of like, you know, Jews hate that shit. When you like, I was in the talk with the Jewish community years ago, and like, I was like, yo, I understand the suffering that you've gone through, but like, you're not the. It's like you're playing suffering Olympics here, man, bro. Because like, if you think about the number of black people, and this is the thing that I asked. I was like, okay, so why do you think they killed the Jews? And they were like, yeah, because they weren't part of the Aryan race. I was like, no, because Jewish people are Semite. They're part black. They're not white. Yes, that's what Semite means. Like, and and then they were pissed off with me. Like, how can I say that? I say no. So in actual fact, your genocide is part of the global black genocide that is taking place. You're part of the global struggle, but you can't like co-opt the global struggle by just ignoring and only speaking about your genocide. You were killed because you were black. You know, and they were pissed off and I said that shit, right? I said, but you know what I mean? Because the fight was to keep a pure Aryan race. That's what Adolf Hitler wanted. That's even so stupid, the whole Aryan thing as well, because Aryans weren't even fucking white, like, you know what I mean? Like, exactly. You know, it's anyway, weird conundrum. I mean, speaking about all this, I wanted to ask you quickly, like before we like finish up and so on. Are you spiritual at all? Do you believe in any like do you follow any religious practice? I mean, you know, from the Cape Flat, so like religion, bro, my family, my mom's and my dad's Anglican.
So
Okay.
I spent, I did the whole like confirmation and all that vibes. And then my Tannie sent me to a Catholic school, my bro.
Eish.
So, and I studied biblical studies, my bro. So
Yeah, I
that's
did.
one of the subjects, right? And so, so I have that upbringing, but my Tannie is more, what's the word? Like more spiritual
Ritual.
than, yeah. So like if give you example, like if I should bring someone home, my Tannie will say, don't bring a Lightie back here. And I'll be like, well, yeah, you don't even know this Lightie. He said, I just don't bring a Lightie back here because I can't, there's something, I feel something wrong. So that's got, for me, it's got like, it's got nothing to do with the religious background. It's got something to do about feeling, So, and my mother's got like a intuition that's almost connected to like First Nation. She like make prayer and like put bladder on you and like, so it's so I have a mixture of like this religious
Yeah.
family background, but also like First Nation search. This book actually, that's why I was mentioning this book, because it connects to a lot of the
How
what
do
I
I get
feel
a copy of that book?
it's I actually I got it online here via Amazon.
Okay, yeah, you must
So
send me a
yeah,
link or something.
I'll check if they got more copies on. You can
But so like with
definitely
your, because I mean, for me, dance is one of my favorite art forms. Like I never actually, I don't know why you just didn't have workshops in Joburg. I also wanted to learn how to be a
now we had actually, I was uploading a what's the name of a workshop that I did. So my outside in the park there, that baseball court in the middle of is it Hillbrow? Yeah, there's like
developer.
a not baseball, a basketball court that we were teaching some lighties that some TV show came to film. But yeah, nah,
Yeah, no, I would have loved that growing up. But I was gonna say like so because dance and movement is quite a spiritual thing. So do you have any
yeah.
like rituals or like any like
Look, I mean, I try to, I I try to go into like like a state when I'm on listen to music. I mean, now recently I play a lot of like Bushman traditional music in the background of just sounds of people chanting, and then I'll jam to that, and like in the process try to just freestyle and let the music um take over. So it's a similar vibe of like when you play capoeira, like of the people are playing. And so the thing about capoeira that I liked is that like you not only play, you clap, you sing, you support, you
yeah,
play the drum,
play
someone
the
swap, you play
instruments?
the tambourine or whatever, and like and you play the berimbau. So it's all of the, you participate in all of the things. So for me, it's almost like when I dance, I'm playing, my body is the instrument that I'm playing to the music. So I try to just, like they say, dance like no one's watching type of vibe. I try to do that as often as I can, because I feel that's the freest form of dance. Because a lot of people want to do moves,
Yeah,
and like that's that you learn the moves so that you can unlearn when you let go. And
yeah,
like, yeah. So for me, that is the connection. I feel like if you read that book, you also get this, that in order for them to have healed people, they first needed to dance. And the dance was like the regimentation, and then the dance becomes the healing. Like it doesn't look like dancing anymore, because the people are just like grabbing each other and shouting and letting go. It's almost like the Afrikaans Hanneklop cake, the
yeah.
charismatic churches, the black churches. It's a similar thing. So you can almost see how easy it was for black people to connect to Christianity, because it's nothing new. It's like they've gone into trance. They've had the music take them elsewhere.
Mm.
So for me, like that is like where like they say, you dance, you pray twice type of vibe.
Yeah, that
So it's
makes
like
sense.
it's that type of, like almost like a meditative state.
Yeah.
And the funny part of capoeira is that there's times when I felt like that in the
In the
in the
order,
Honda as well.
the order,
That
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, cool, man. Just a few more, two more questions. Like, what does the XY stand for?
It's actually YX.
YX.
It's in like the Malcolm X era was like Owens were searching for
Identity. Yeah.
identity, and so everyone was taking X, and I was like, nah, you must understand why, and like to constantly ask why. So it's actually YX question and a question mark at the end to always ask the question why. And actually, I see you got the flag at the back, and the way the flag's hanging, that's actually a Y.
Yeah.
And like, for me, it's like when I saw it initially, I was like, "You're dope." I hope they actually promote the why, because we need to constantly like ask why, you know. And like as soon as I started learning knowledge yourself, I realized that knowledge is infinite, right? So like you constantly have to, there's like always a student. My bra Polsky has this thing where he says like always a student, is to always be eager to learn new things, to not be um, like there's this idea that we are knowledgeable, so, and which is dangerous, because the knowledge we read, like if you, I mean, this book, like this guy says, the most knowledgeable people are the elders in the Bushman tribe who have never ever read a book, are more knowledgeable than what he is, you know. And so for me, like to remember that, man, that like you don't, like often I go to these talks and people look at me and they're like, "How the fuck is this gonna, what, you know, just because of my hair they already have this fucking
Perception,
yeah, you know." And so it's like to not do that as well, to not
make judgment or
of someone, you know.
Yeah.
And so the YX is to like remind me of that, like to always be vigilant of asking questions and learning from the occasion type of thing, you know.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's dope. Just one last thing quickly before we go.
Sorry, my surname is Jansen. 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 Slavan Jan.
Okay, so
you know what I mean?
slave
So,
of Jan's Jan Pirovit's a Slav.
Jan, bro.
I was gonna just say, there's this little segment I've got in my podcast where I say when I, and then I ask you a question, and then you complete the sentence. Now, so
okay.
if I say when I wake up, so for you, obviously, so when you wake up.
Yo, what am I doing? I'm like, why do I have to wake up? There's
Oh, that's quite. Hey, when you got Lighties now, there's no escape.
You know what I mean? You're like, yeah, why do I have to wake up?
All right. When I am super hungry, I
wish I was in Cape Town.
was gonna say there's no bunny chow, there's no Gatsby's in California.
That spice is not here, bro. I wish I was in Cape Town.
When I feel angry,
I remember that it's ego related.
Okay. When I see someone acting like a fool, or like a nair, actually.
I remember that I was that nair also at one stage.
Yeah, that's true. That is so true, you know. And the last one, when I feel overwhelmed.
I remember to breathe. Nowadays, breathe. I remember to breathe.
Okay, now, bro, thank you so much, man. Like, honestly, it's been a pleasure having you on. Really good to actually finally get to meet you. And I mean, I know it's not in person, but it's still really good, man. Emile YX.
Thanks for the conversation. I needed to connect again with people outside of this bubble over here. Daddy Dakey needed to expand a little bit.
I know the feeling, man. This lockdown business is it's not a joke, eh? I mean, I'm used to. I'm an engineer. I'm a producer and stuff. So I'm used to being in confined spaces. But still, even then, you still need to like interact with some people. Like, yo, and we've been. London was locked down again now for November. So we're only coming out of lockdown next week. They're relaxing these restrictions again and stuff. So yeah,
they're about to actually there's a curfew here from 10 to like 5 or something in the US at the moment, because the numbers are through the roof. Yes.
No, but bro, thank you for waking up so early for me as well.
Problem,
this has been the Other Side of the Sun podcast. Get to know Emile YX, and peace, man. We are
well. All right.